And hello there, welcome back to the booth here at the Magic World Championship. That's Luis Scott Vargas and Marshall Sutcliffe. It is our pleasure to have you along as we work our way into the draft round here. This is going to be the first draft round of the day here on day number 2. And oh boy, do we have a nice matchup. We actually had a chance to watch William Huey Jensen's draft here. Check it out. Jensen versus Josh Utter-Leyton.
Yeah, so
who are you rooting for, Luis? These are two people you're very fond of.
Don't make me do this.
Yeah, I'm putting him on the spot here because these are two close friends.
Let's just say I want them both to make top 4. Can we leave it at that?
Yes, we can leave it at that. All right, so we actually had a chance to have a quick chat with Josh Utter-Leyton about his strategy here. Let's take a listen.
Get it all. The best Ixalan draft strategy is Merfolk. It has so many powerful uncommons. Realistically, I think Vampires is probably the best because it's the best at common. You generally want to be aggressive in Ixalan draft. The creatures are much better at attacking than blocking.
All right, good stuff there from Josh Utter-Leyton. Gives us a little bit of an idea of what it is he has going on. And he is sitting down, though, and ready to play against William Huey Jensen, of course, coming off of a perfect 7-0 start yesterday, but not a bad day for Raptor, as we call him, Josh Utter-Leyton. He was 5-2, which is makes up that second tier of 3 players.
Yeah, the fact that Josh is tied for second place at 5-2 really does show you how kind of the records end up in such a small field with a decent amount of rounds.
All right, well, a reasonable start for both players. A Dire Fleet Hoarder here for Jensen, and he's got one of his 3 Headstrong Brutes to follow it up. On the other side of the table, though, a Bishop's Soldier. That card has certainly put in good work in the format, given how quick it ends up being. A valuable 2-drop and lifelink, very powerful in this format as well.
Kind of interesting bit of interaction here where Bishop's Soldier likes to trade because it gains 2 life, and taking a Pirate off of Jensen's side of the board if Josh trades for that Dire Fleet Hoarder makes it so Headstrong Brute no longer has Menace. But on the other hand, trading for a Dire Fleet Hoarder is not great. Gives Jensen a piece of treasure and kind of accelerates him on his next turn.
Yeah, interesting, too, that these two guys sat right next to each other during the booster draft portion. So there's going to be a lot of, like, I bet you Jensen looks at that Fathom Fleet Firebrand is like, oh, you're the one that took it, huh?
Well,
I'm going to wheel that one.
It's funny that he might have wheeled it if Josh hadn't taken it, the pick directly after.
That's right. One of the other interesting things is that Josh, of course, passed Hostage Taker to William Jensen.
And
they know that it's in his deck.
I'm sure Josh assumes that William's playing it. Hostage Taker is such a powerful card that you will splash it given the opportunity.
Land number 4 here for Jensen.
Fiery Cannonade losing a bit of value given that Josh actually does have a Pirate in play here. It would be interesting if Josh double blocks the Headstrong Brute. He's opening himself up to Skullduggery, Sure Strike, any number of other cards. But in this particular case, Fiery Cannonade actually works as a trick there. It would just kill the Bishop Soldier and let it have the Headstrong Brute defeat the Firebrand in one-on-one combat.
It looks like Jensen has that and the Sure Strike, so he had multiple options. Though having played nothing post-combat.
Yeah, Jensen's hand's a little bit awkward here with a 5-drop in Stormfleet Arsonist, Sure Strike, which has no value once Josh doesn't block, and a Fiery Cannonade, which Jensen doesn't really want to fire off just to kill Bishop Soldier, though he is letting Josh gain 2 life as a result.
I think he's really hoping that he gets to nab something here, and it looks like that is not going to be the case unless he wants to just kill it, the Bishop Soldier, as Pterodon Knight is 3-3. Jensen has really picked a fight here, though, and he's going to continue his ways, bashing in once again. And again, Josh is content to race here. He does have that Bishop Soldier aiding him in the race. But that Arsonist is going to come down and actually pose a bit of a problem here for Josh. There's no convenient permanence to sack.
It's a little annoying for Josh because normally sacking a land when you have 4 in play, 2 in hand is not too bad, but that does delay the arrival of Suncrown Hunters in Josh's hand for a full turn.
Yeah, at least a full turn, and on top of it, Jensen, of course, gets that big 4/4 body out there as well, which threatens to block.
Josh does get to play the Thrash of Raptors in his hand, or Nest Robber in his hand, rather, and attack with Pterodon Knight if he wants to get in 3 points of flying damage. That doesn't leave him with particularly great blocks. Like the Stormcrown or the Stormfleet Arsonist is very effective against a board full of 2/2s. At some point, I think Josh is going to have to run into this Sure Strike and probably get demolished by it. It's going to be hard to envision a game that plays out in such a manner that Josh doesn't get, you know, kind of wrecked by Sure Strike.
Jensen's still staring down at that fiery cannonade as well, and wondering if he's going to be able to get a little more value out of that.
Yeah, I think the answer is going to be yes once this Nest Robber comes into play.
Yeah, there's the Nest Robber. That is going to clear the way for 3 damage in the air thanks to the Pterodon Knight's now flying ability, but yeah, Jensen looks like he's got a really nice attack lined up here as he can take out 2 creatures with 1 card. And he can attack for 9.
I think given that Josh's turn 5 was just playing a 2-1 that dies to cannonade, the ball is firmly in Jensen's side of the court. He's able to kind of leverage this turn. He actually might cannonade before blocks. Yeah. If he cannonades, that wipes out Nest Robber, that wipes out Bishop Soldier. Josh then has no good blocks, and Jensen still has a Sure Strike, which actually could even be lethal if the Stormfleet Arsonist and Headstrong Brute don't get blocked.
Oh, that's interesting. And Jensen, of course, is going through all of his options here to find out, all right, well, what is Josh most likely to block? How would he block if he were to? And also, what could he possibly have in his hand that can interact with the plays I'm about to make? And it looks like he's decided that in combat is going to be the best time to try to take advantage of Fiery Cannonade.
And so Josh, if he lines up any double block, it's going to be tough for him here. So Jensen is losing a little bit of value here. He's potentially playing around Sure Strike.
I think he's trying to bait Josh into playing a card like
Vampire
Seal or something along those lines. And now he's just going to force the issue by playing his own Sure Strike. Now, if Josh has anything, he's going to have to play it. But as it turns out, a 2-for-1 either way. This does, of course, make the Fiery Cannonade a little bit worse as there's nothing that actually dies to it left on the board. But look at the board state here for Jensen.
Yeah, a second Headstrong Brute, it really just means that Josh has no good blocks and not a whole lot of hope of racing here.
Josh drew an Aerosaur for the turn.
Drawing a 5-drop is nice when you're hitting your 5th land, but because 2 of Jensen's creatures have Menace and because the Stormfleet Arsonist is big enough to win against any individual creature, it's really hard to imagine what Josh can line up here.
It's not an Imperial Aerosaur. There we go. Shining Aerosaur is what Josh has in his hand. This has felt like a fine draw for Josh, but it really hasn't panned out super well for him. There are 3/4s pretty decent here.
2-drop, 2-drop, 4-drop, 2-drop, 5-drop. Like that's like a decent curve. It just Jensen's cards were a little bit better, and Jensen had a combat trick on the timely turn, plus the raid trigger of Stormfleet Arsonist was very relevant here.
Jensen really went into the tank there before his attack step. I wonder if he even looked at his draw. He just
no card he could draw would stop him from attacking. He might have drawn like something like Hostage Taker, maybe he wanted to play that, but even then I think just attacking with everything is probably going to work out pretty well.
He was just jamming.
So Josh might line up. At this point, Josh, he might be in like desperation mode of, you know, what is the best I can do, assuming Jensen just doesn't have another card in his hand, and taking a ton of damage and maybe trying to make an advantageous trade here is where he can start. So Jensen likely put the damage on the Shining Aerosaur so that Fiery Cannonade will finish it off.
That's right. It'll also finish off the Pterodon Knight. And Jensen, well, he did have a nice little follow-up play there. Another 2-drop Darfleet Hoarder. And this one, it seems well in hand for William Huey Jensen to take down game number 1. He's got 3 creatures versus 1, all of them lethal threats.
One of them with Menace even.
And one with Menace, right. So is there something that Josh can find to get out of here? No, there is not, and that is William Huey Jensen scooping him up and taking game number 1 from Josh Utter-Leyton in short order. So good stuff and a good start to our day here from the booster draft portion. We're going to have more Magic for you right after these messages.
Ixalan is available in stores. Brave the unknown by exploring the lush jungles of Ixalan. Discover a world filled with mighty dinosaurs, treasure-hunting pirates, graceful merfolk, and sinister vampires. Visit Ixalan.com to find out more.
Up your game with Ultra Pro Magic the Gathering accessories. Find the best Magic art on card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and more. Visit ultrapro.com to learn more and find a retailer near you.
And welcome back to coverage here at the Magic World Championship. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe in the booth with Luis Scott Vargas. And, well, we're in the early stages of day 2 here. Things are going to start heating up a little bit more as we work our way towards the afternoon. Remember, at the end of the day today, we are cutting to our top 4. You will know by the end of the day who is going to come back and play on Sunday for $100,000 first prize, $50,000 for second, 25 for the other two. So no joke here as far as prize pools go. This is in fact the largest prize pool, first place prize I should say, for a Magic tournament. So this is the big one.
I want to see one of the players scoop up the max possible prize, which is winning the team competition and the World Championship. We've got a couple players, Brad Nelson being one of them, eligible for that. Members of Genesis and Musashi who are in the World Championship.
Of course, we are going to be watching that team championship play out tomorrow as well. But today, we've got 3 rounds of booster draft followed by 4 rounds of standard. We are in the first round of draft here. Josh Utter-Leyton versus William Jensen, a pair, well, basically a pair of Hall of Famers here.
Josh has been voted in, not yet inducted.
That'll happen in what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks time?
Yeah, about a month.
Yep.
Pro Tour Ixalan.
Jensen, he got voted in back in 2013 with a couple of other reasonable players.
Well, you know, according to Ben Stark, it's the best draft team Hall of Fame class of all time.
I don't think that's really arguable. I'm sure, I don't know, Finkel or somebody would have something to say, but they also have 5 players. So.
Yeah, that's true. But they can even pick their 3 if they want.
Oh, jeez, gauntlet thrown.
So do you think it's an unfair advantage for Josh Utter-Leyton in this format? Given that his nickname is Raptor, he has a heavy tribal component coming in. There's more Raptors in this set than any other set I've ever seen.
Yeah. Would you say he's frenzied, a companion?
Maybe he's the Ripjaw Raptor.
Ripjaw. He doesn't talk that much, though.
Yeah. Ranging Raptor? He does like to run.
All right, I like that. Ranging Raptor. We call him Huey. That's one of his many nicknames. And it looks like we're back underway for game number 2. Speaking of dinosaurs, there's a hatchling there for Josh Utter-Leyton to kick off.
Speaking of raptors, actually.
Raptor hatchling. I would not call him that.
No.
He's a full-grown raptor. Interesting decision here as Jensen says, you know what, if you're going to attack with your raptor hatchling, I'm happy to just take the 1. I don't want to upgrade it to a 3-3 with trample. And a solid follow-up play here as well.
Yeah, very strong start from Josh. A 2-1 for a striker plus a raptor hatching, which is kind of like a 3-3 in abeyance, right? Like it's going to be a 3-3 at some point here. Gives him a pretty good start on the play.
Yeah, Emissary Sunrise just does a good job of brick walling some of the cheaper threats.
Sure strike. Going to be a critical card in a matchup this fast, which, you know, as we've seen, turns out to be most of the matchups.
Yeah, most of the ones we've seen on camera, not too many control decks, and the ones that were didn't last long. In the meantime, Josh is going to go ahead and represent such things. Attack with both. Really? Thrash of Raptors now too for him? What is going on?
Well, given that we're seeing 3 Raptors in the feature match area currently, that qualifies as a thrash.
Indeed. 1 in the seat, 2 on the board. This is a Headstrong Brute that's attacking directly into the Thrash of Raptors, a trade that Jensen would prefer to make here, and it would be blockable. He didn't even have a Pirate at the time of attacks there. You can see he actively wanted that trade as he's now played a Pirate post-combat.
Yeah, he instead of removing Josh's choices, he gave Josh the opportunity to make what, from William's mind, is a misplay, which would be trading.
Mm-hmm. But since that card can't block anyway, he's going to give him the option, say you don't want it, well, take your 3 damage. Hey, we've got a quick update, by the way, from our floor reporter, Tim Willoughby. Tim, what do you got?
Well, we've got matches falling thick and fast here. Sam Black winning his 2-0 over Javier Dominguez with a few mana issues. Seth Manfield a game up with his blue-green deck against Kelvin Chu, but the exciting one really, Brad Nelson against Chris Calcano. Chris getting an early start with Blight Keepers, Dowsing Daggers, keeping the beatdowns going, using the Soul Feast ability on Blight Keeper, knocks Brad to 1, but Brad able to fight back with his own enchantment, Mark of the Vampire on Windstrider, meaning that ultimately he was able to win that race. Brad Nelson 1 game up against Christian Calcano.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate it. And we are back here with William Jensen versus Josh Utter-Leyton, where Josh finds himself a little bit ahead.
He does. One of the things that's going on here is Josh knows that William's got Hostage Taker in his deck. And there's a Dire Fleet Hoarder in play that if Josh kills it, William then gets to play Hostage Taker off of that treasure. So that can make things a little bit more complicated.
Look at that, another Emissary of Sunrise there for Josh Utter-Leyton. So solid uncommons hitting the battlefield for him.
Also gets to get rid of a hijack, which is not very close to casting. He doesn't have a second red source.
Yeah, and of course, by hitting with that Explore, he gets a +1/+1 counter on Emissary of Sunrise. So now it's a 3-2 with First Strike, which is a real stopper, especially against Headstrong Brute, as he can pair it up with any other blocker. And the First Strike will kill the Brute before it gets a chance to do damage. So very solid start here for Josh.
But that Unknown Shores in William's hand means he could cast Hostage Taker this turn, which, given that Josh is fairly light on removal, means that all he has to do is wait 1 more turn, then he can recast the Emissary of Sunrise or Raptor Hatchling or Thrash of Raptors, whichever card he decides to take hostage.
Yeah, that is, of course, the window, right? You play a Hostage Taker, you steal one of their better creatures, and then you kind of keep your fingers crossed that they can't untap and immediately kill it. Because if they don't, you have a huge advantage. Jensen also playing a copy of March of the Drowned in his list that he can use to get back Hostage Taker. It looks like he's going to go for the Thrash of Raptors. And that means no attacks this turn, though, from Jensen. The Emissary of Sunrise doing a very good job on blocks.
Unfortunately for Josh, the removal spell he does have is a Pious Interdiction. It's not the way you want to stop Hostage Taker. It'll make it so it can't attack or block, but it certainly does not stop the Thrash Raptors from getting cast onto Huey's side of the board.
Yeah, of course, hostage taker on the board. Just a 2-3 pirate. So, do you have any thoughts, Luis, by the way, on the difference between taking the Thrash of Raptors versus the Emissary of Sunrise there?
Thrash of Raptors as a 5-3 trampler represents a lot more damage, and given that William wants to slow the game down and play a little more defensively, I think he's just trying to mitigate the amount of damage he takes so that he can get an advantage off hostage taker.
Wow, did you see that sequence there too? Josh just attacked with his Emissary of Sunrise, actually with both of them. Jensen went for the double block, and it actually worked. He got to trade off an Emissary of Sunrise for a Queen Space Soldier, so he's going to be happy with that transaction.
Yeah, that worked out quite well for Jensen. Turned out Josh did not have a combat trick.
And Jensen, of course, will take note of that as well.
Josh made double block here with Bishop Soldier and Raptor Hatchling. If nothing happens, it's a 2-for-1, except Josh then gets a 3-3 out of the deal. Jensen could also trade with just assign the Bishop Soldier, just assign damage there, but I don't think Josh would be too unhappy about that either. He's trading up. And if Jensen does have a trick, well, Josh still gets a 3-3. This is kind of hard for this to go too wrong.
Yeah, so he's going to make that double block. And like you said, Jensen does have the option, though, to order the Bishop Soldier first, and you can assign, you have to assign lethal damage to it, but anything extra you can assign onto it, or you can put it onto the Raptor Hatchling if you'd like. And it looks like he says, okay, let's get rid of those.
And we're likely going to see Jensen cast Thrash Raptors. He does have Deathless Ancient, which is a powerful card, but you really want to get Thrash Raptors off of that hostage taker just in case Josh draws a removal spell.
Yeah, you don't want to have to keep those fingers crossed for too long, hoping that Josh doesn't rip. Well, another mountain would be something I'd be concerned about if I was Jensen.
Something like Fire Cannon Blast would be problematic, and it is a
Yeah.
card that Josh could certainly have in his hand.
Right. Let alone a removal spell like a Lightning Strike or something along those lines. So his hand, though, Pious Interdiction, which you mentioned before, Tillinolly's Knight, and a Sun-Crowned Hunters. He is a red mana off of the Sun-Crowned Hunters, but he could cast the Tillinolly's Knight or the Pious Interdiction if you'd like.
So even though Josh's creatures are individually better than William's, he's got 3-2 first strike, 3-3 menace. William has enough small creatures that he's got good double blocks, and he's already not identified for a fact that Josh doesn't have a trick, but he's already made it a little less likely Josh doesn't have a trick given how things have played out.
Also of note here, I mentioned the March of the Drowned. It looks like Huey's not main decking the March of the Drowned. He may have brought it in. We don't know for sure, but it is not actually in the main.
This doesn't feel like a matchup where March of the Drowned would be a high priority because it's such a racing matchup. These decks seem to go past each other a lot more than just trade off. Though I think that William would be pretty happy if he had March of the Drowned right now, because his hostage taker has a decent chance of dying during this combat. Basically, William, I think, is deciding which creature to double block, and I don't think he's going to play around Vampire Zeal. He could, but it doesn't seem particularly profitable to worry about it, because not only are you somewhat behind, especially given the life totals, you don't really have the board that lets you play around Vampire Zeal all that effectively.
And also, just 2 turns ago, there was a combat where Vampire Zeal would have been quite nice, and Josh didn't seem to have it, so even more information. Yeah, he's going to be happy with this transaction, too, I have to imagine. He kind of already got his value out of the hostage taker. He's traded a 2-2 and a 2-3 vanilla for these 2 first strikers. He's got to be happy with that. Oh, and here's Deathless Ancient now for Jensen. This is kind of his big top-end play.
And this is the
And
turn
it looks good here, doesn't it?
where Josh wants to draw a pump spell or removal spell or something along those lines, because right now Josh doesn't have an attack. He's got 2 3/3s. Jensen can block one with a 4/4 and either double block that or chump it, and this just really stabilizes him. But it's also a very close game because one spell in either direction could really break this open. Also, Josh is drawing live to a mountain to play Sun-Crowned Hunters, and that would open the door for him to start attacking again and threaten close to lethal, given that the 3 points of damage off in range are Josh Jensen.
I think he's just drawn another copy of Tillinolly's Knight, and he can just simply pass the turn back. Do believe I see a Lightning Strike in hand for Jensen. Yeah, I can confirm that here. Let's take a look at his hand. Sure Strike and Lightning Strike, plus a Swamp and a Mountain. So we've hit a bit of a standoff here between the 2 players. Jensen's life total being at 5 means that him starting to look to get aggressive doesn't make a lot of sense, and Josh still hasn't been able to find that second red mana source to cast his Sun Crown Hunter, so he's had to settle for a pair of 2-drops. Ooh, but there's a Pterodon Knight, and he does have a dinosaur there.
So Josh is getting to the point where he might just send everything in, knowing that the Deathless Ancient gets a profitable block, but everything else is not. The Lightning Strike does help there, as does the Sure Strike, so what would end up happening is Deathless Agent eats Pterodon Knight, Lightning Strike kills one of like the Tillinolli's Knights or that Headstrong Brute, and then Sure Strike plus one of the creatures takes out, like, say, the dinosaur. That still leaves Jensen dead, and it's pretty hard for Josh to resist. Jensen would have to then chump block with one of his 2/2 or his 2/1. So even though Josh loses out on the Deathless Ancient exchange, everything else is a 1-for-1, and he gets the card back by the chump block. So I think an all-out attack is favorable for Josh here, though if he can wait a turn, the Sun Crown Hunters will deliver potentially the last points of damage.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering here, is does he just wait an extra turn to make sure that the Sun Crown Hunters can get into the mix, because not only do they have that solid ability with Enrage, they also are pretty big on this board. They're 5/4.
Wow, Jensen got a little punished here for not playing a land. He has now 2 lands in his hand. He drew Stormfleet Arsonist. He can play the Arsonist, but then he can't play Sure Strike and Lightning Strike in the same turn. I have to say, people often lose out by not playing lands more often than they do by holding them in hand.
We'll see how badly this hurts, but that a 4/4 blocker would be very desirable in addition to both of those tricks, though, especially now that the Sun Crown Hunters is here, where a Sure Strike on, excuse me, the Lightning Strike to take down one of the other blockers to try to set up that trade is going to make it really difficult. Because that's just 3 damage guaranteed, right? I mean,
the Sun Crown Hunters is going to get 3 damage
can't
through.
do anything.
Unless William has one option. He can block with Direfleet Hoarder and then Lightning Strike his own Direfleet Hoarder before damage. But that doesn't actually save him damage, because all of Josh's creatures have 3 power and some are getting through anyway. So currently, as things stand, Josh has 6 attackers. Jensen has 4 blockers. Lightning Strike kills one of the unblocked creatures, and then the damage from the Sun Crown Hunter plus the other unblocked creature does deal enough. So if Josh attacks with everything, this should do it. And there's not much Jensen could have here with only 3 mana up. Something like Skullduggery, perhaps.
No, it looks like Josh has decided he's going to send in the squad here. And every creature is going to hit the red zone. Is there any way for Jensen to get out of this? Only 4 blockers to 6 attackers. No way out for Jensen, and he's going to scoop him up, and that is Josh Utter-Leyton taking down game number 2 and forcing to game number 3.
Wow, Josh
Not
won
done yet.
through a successful hostage taker.
Yes. Yeah, good point. Wow. That is not an easy thing to do, to say the least.
Well, down the stretch, Josh ended up drawing 6 lands total, and Jensen drew 9 lands total. So that hostage taker 3-for-1 still ends up getting balanced out by the couple extra lands that Jensen drew and the couple extra spells Josh had.
Let's take a quick look at Brad Nelson versus Christian Calcano. We heard that update from Tim a little earlier. Brad winning a very close game 1 against Calcano. Calcano loving the 1-drops, the equipment, the auras. Then you see some of that happening on the battlefield here with a couple of Storm Tamers, and it looks like a Pirate's Cutlass.
This does not look good for Calcano.
Whoa, this is a big attack from Brad, isn't it?
He's sending in a bunch of Merfolk, a bunch of 2/2s, but there's still a lot of damage, and Calcano...
They match up well against 1/1s, as it turns out.
They do.
Also a tough spot. You see One with the Wind in the graveyard for Calcano. Playing against a deck with blue is a nightmare for that style of deck, as they have 2 common bounce spells and 1 uncommon that pretty easily deal with it outside of a Jade Guardian scenario. And I do see a Depths of Desire in the graveyard for Nelson that surely took out whatever that One with the Wind was on. And it's a major setback, not only in tempo, but also you're actually getting a card for a card there as well. Tough to come back from that.
And kind of very short on damage here, especially with Ixali's Diviner back to block. So I think that he's gonna his aura plan has hit a bit of a stumbling block this particular match, but he's got 2 more to try and rally.
Is that a Sailor of Means in the middle of the table there?
It is. It's a 1-4. You can make it a 3-5. Still gets blocked, and it's still 4 points short of the finishing blow.
Cal's got something. Imperial
Air Soar off of his treasure.
Little splashy
Wow,
splash.
he got a little closer to finishing the game than you might have thought.
So he's going to attack for 2. Nelson's just laughing. Oh, snapping sailback is going to be the game, though, as Calcano simply doesn't have enough blockers. So Calc says, I almost had you there, Brad. But as it turns out, wasn't quite enough. He says, good games, and that one is going to go to Brad Nelson. Brad came into the round sitting at 4-3, kind of on the high end of that middle pack, and he's going to be 5-3 now. He needs to have a good, solid day today if he's going to make it into the top 4, but it is within reach for Brad at 5-3.
Certainly, and starting 4-3, no one's dream, but very live. Brad, if he goes 6-1 today, then he will make the top 4, and if he goes 5-2 today, he actually still has a chance.
Interestingly as well, Calcano drops to 4-4 with that loss, but he's still alive as well, though. He needs things to go.
He doesn't have another loss to give unless he wants to rely on tie breaks, though Calcano had high tie breaks coming into today, so it's possible that Calcano could also go 5-1 from here on out and still make it.
Of course, we're going to get a game 3 here between William Huey Jensen and Josh Utter-Leyton, as they've both taken turns just sort of smashing each other with superior board states. Hopefully we get a nice close one here. Hostage taker on the splash for Jensen. He's playing red-black otherwise, but wasn't able to win even though he resolved it.
Josh hoping that no hostages are taken this particular game. Since
Indeed.
That ends up being fairly bad news in general, and it just so happens that Josh's removal suite doesn't involve anything that can get rid of the hostage taker once it's in play. Though, funnily enough, Josh is playing 2 copies of Ryle. So he is really ready to go deep on these Sun Crown Hunters. If he can untap with Sun Crown Hunters in play, he can potentially just burn Huey out from a pretty high life total.
We also saw the Raptor Hatchling in play for him as well, which he can use Ryle to upgrade that to a 3-3 with Trample and get that card back. I have seen a decent number of Ryles played in the format, but it wasn't for the reason that I thought. I kind of thought that people would build like an Enrage theme deck and kind of try to go off. And I've actually seen it more when they're just a bit short on playables, where they have a lot of creatures, and they're like, well...
What if they really want Trample, though?
Yeah, I've seen it cast on a lot of 2/2s, so I'm going to assume that it wasn't for the Trample value. All right, players are examining their opening hands here. We're in the first booster draft round here at the World Championship. We're in Boston, and we're going to see, can Jensen remain undefeated, or will Josh be the first person in the field to take a loss off of him? Well, Nestrobber's going to get in and knock Jensen down to 18. No 2-drop for Jensen, but he does have a 3. It's a Headstrong Brute, and that signals he's ready to rumble. He wants to start attacking.
He is, but that can't block.
No.
And Josh starting with a hasty 2-drop. This is like the best possible scenario for Nestrobber. It's already gotten in 4 points of damage.
Yeah, it's like the champion Nestrobber of the realm here. Is that a Headstrong Brute for Josh? Yes, it is.
Jensen falls to 16 here, and then Josh also has Vampire Zeal in hand, so we're looking at a pretty good turn next turn for Josh if he has another Plains, because he has Emissary of Sunrise and Vampire Zeal, so
Let's take a look.
he's going to be able to have a very efficient turn. Wow, Josh really needs that second white to, because if Josh can hit a second white, he can play out the next couple turns very effectively.
One of the interesting things here from Jensen's perspective is he crashes in for 3 free damage there. There is no blocks possible. As he does, well, that's what I was going to say. He has Vanquished the Weak. He doesn't want to wait, though, until Josh's turn. You see Jensen really being careful about when he uses these tricks. He used that instant speed spell on his turn to make sure that there was no, well, Vampire Zeal, a card like that from Josh Utter-Leyton, where if you remember back to game 1, Jensen was setting up attacks and trying to entice Josh into making blocks because he was in an advantageous position. So he did not hit a white mana source. In fact, I think he drew a mountain. He's going to keep Pterodon Knight, though, which of course signals that he does have another land.
And Pterodon Knight, pretty solid play on this board.
Jensen really wants to play a pirate here. Awkward.
Yeah, Jensen giving up the raid trigger on Stormfleet Arsonist to give menace to the Headstrong Brute, because otherwise Josh could just block. So, that as it turns out, the land that the Stormfleet Arsonist would have taken out, not all that important for Josh. Not having double white is really tripping up Josh here. He's unable to really get the advantage of Vampire Zeal costing 1 mana, because he can play one spell this turn, whether it's Vampire Zeal, Emissary of Sunrise, or Pterodon Knight. None of those things are efficient. His only out hitting multiple spells, play Emissary of Sunrise and hit another planes off of it.
In the meantime, a solid attack here from Josh Utter-Leyton, though. If we take a look at what Jensen has in hand, he's got a Queen's Agent. For next turn, he also has, a Mountain in his hand, so that could help swing the race back in Jensen's favor. And this really does put a crimp. You weren't kidding, Luis. That was Josh's only white mana for the turn there.
And imagine if Josh could follow this up with Pterodon Knight, he would be looking very good here.
Wow, and Jensen's actually just drawing all of his top-end cards here. That was a Pyromancer off the top. Oh, and it's devastating here because once again, Josh, even though he has the answer in his hand with another Vampire Zeal, he doesn't have the white mana.
And he's drawn another mountain.
Oh, his deck is so close to just crushing at this point, but that bottleneck of 1 plains has punished him so hard. He's gonna really hope to hit a plains here, and it's another mountain somehow.
Well, this is not working out well for Josh, because restricted to 1 spell a turn, but his spells are just not as powerful as Jensen's. And Jensen is casting multiple spells this turn and, playing 5-drop after 5-drop with a 6-drop in hand. Josh is playing 1-drop on turn 5, 3-drop on turn 6. This is not the curve you want.
Another smart play there for Jensen. He played the Headstrong Brute pre-combat, knowing he was going to do that, plus the Skymarch Bloodletter, just to ensure that his Brute had menace. And now he has a dominating board position, and Jensen is on the verge of perhaps going 8-0 here at the World Championship. He just says, "May I attack?" Josh says, "Sure," and he says, "All of them." And that's going to do it. Jensen, undefeated still. He's starting off day 2 1-0, and he is now 8-0. And somehow we're going to already start talking about, his top 4. Like, he's starting to, see that on the horizon here, right?
Unless the wheels completely fall off this train, Jensen is going to be in the top 4.
I mean, this is one of those things where within a few rounds, he could have it locked up already.
In 1 round, he could have it locked up.
Whew. All right, well, we'll follow that storyline, of course. We're not going to let any of those updates slip by you, but we do have another match still going here. This is Kelvin Chu versus Seth Manfield.
And the Ramparts just got crashed, which means that that double block on Kumena's Speaker is just not going to work out well for Chu. And in fact,
oh no,
Chu's entire board is going to the graveyard.
Chu's board is gone. Oh, and he's down to 4 life as well. Well, I know where I stand on this one. Looking good for Seth Manfield. Seth also near the top with Kelvin at 5-2. They round out the players who are at 5-2, including Josh Utter-Leyton coming into the round. He, of course, is now 5-3, and it looks like Kelvin's going to pick up his 3rd loss here, too, without some pretty dramatic comeback.
Well, Vampires is one of the decks that has the most opportunity for that, given the life gain they have attached to a lot of their spells, including this one. But it's still going to be very difficult for Kelvin to get out of this.
All right, so he's going to cash a Nourishment here. That is going to put him up to 7 and buy him a little bit of a cushion, but is it enough?
And because Seth didn't pump his Jungle Delver, he's got a follow-up here of some kind.
the Dreadnought there from Seth Manfield. Not sure how great that's going to be here, though. It is lethal on its own at 4 power. Dust Legion Dreadnought, though, of course, is a vehicle and needs to be crewed, so it doesn't act as an additional threat.
If Kelvin's able to play enough chump blockers and start getting a lifelink going, he might be able to get back into this, and it looks like he's got enough spells that he's going to be able to play 2 or 3 spells this turn. All his cards are very cheap. But that Dreadnought is going to make Kelvin pay attacks every turn. It's just going to require chump blocking until Kelvin can assemble a board big enough to stop it. And I don't think, given what he currently has available, he's able to do that.
As for Seth Manfield, at least he has something to do with his mana. He's got that Jungle Delver at the ready, which can become its own threat a little bit down the line. Kelvin's looking at Vampire Zeal and looking at his hand. There's a Legion's Judgment. Unfortunately for Kelvin, that is a sorcery, and it's unlikely that he's going to be able to entice Seth Manfield to fire up that Dusk Legion Dreadnought anytime soon on his turn.
He's going to go for the 2-for-1.
That's pretty clever, though. He's going to use his pump spell Vampire Zeal to give the command speaker +2/+2 until end of turn, turning it into a 4/4 and putting it in range there. So of Legion's Judgment and kill it. So I like that. That's a clever play. It's 2 cards to get rid of 1. It's not where he wants to be, but he's also left Seth without the ability currently to fire up the Dusk Legion Dreadnought. He's going to have to commit some mana or some more stuff to his board here to do it.
Yeah, unfortunately for Chu, he's going to be forced to chump block once Seth does use that Jungle Delver. Or if, even worse, if Seth drew another creature, he could just crew the Dreadnought with that creature.
Looks like an Ixali's Keeper is what he found there. And now all of a sudden Seth is way, way ahead because Kelvin had that 1 chump blocker with the Conquistador, but I think that's about all he's got going on here. He has a Dustborn Sky Marcher in his hand, and then whatever he drew for his turn.
Another Conquistador.
Another Conquistador, yeah. This is Chump Block City here for Kelvin Chu, and he is not happy to visit. Looks like more action from Manfield as well.
Not that he needed more to put this game away, but,
No.
you know, the more the merrier.
So he's going to put a counter on his Jungle Delver, which gives him enough to crew the Dusk Legion Dreadnought. Attack with both creatures.
So a forced play from Kelvin's side of the board here. Unless, Kelvin was at 3. Okay, so Kelvin falls to 1 then.
I see. Yeah, we had him at 2 there, but it looks like he was actually at 3 life.
Kelvin's going to need something pretty good to get out of this. Wow.
I don't think he's going to get a chance to attack here.
No, the Bishop is quite strong, but not going to be enough.
Yeah, Bishop of Rebirth is the type of card that he could use to come back a little bit later in the game or with a slightly more settled board, but not from that position. Way too far behind. And Seth Manfield takes down that game. Welcome back to the booth. That was some impressive stuff set for the feature match area here. We've got 2 more rounds of Booster Draft to bring you before we transition over to Standard. Please do hang around with us. We'll be back after these messages.